If you have a sales team in place, you should track every single thing about their performance. Today, we're talking about appointment setters. So why do we track stuff? I mean, it gives us data. Data gives us facts, and facts help us make a data-driven decision to grow our company predictably. You cannot make decisions based off assumptions or feelings because you're just shooting in the dark. I always say that every action has equal or opposite reaction, and it's your job to find out the reason behind a certain reaction based off your action. So you have to figure out, is it a sales or marketing issue? Why is my setter not closing enough deals? Why do we book less calls, etc., etc. And that's what data gives you. Now, I want to quickly talk about phases of your sales team. If you have one setter, one closer, you don't really have to track a bunch of metrics. You could get away with, show rate, close rate, offer rate, book calls, etc. However, if you expanding your sales team, you should expand your metrics as well, because there's a relationship between each metric, right? This metric influences this one, this metric influences this one, etc., etc. And that's your job to identify where's the bottleneck. So I'm gonna break down this video in two parts. The first one is gonna be what your setters should track in order to see how they're performing, and then I'm gonna show you what stats you as a business owner, sales manager, CRO should look at if you want to make future decisions. Obviously, starting off with the appointment. Every time the appointment setter books an appointment, he should track this stuff, right? So we should track closer, consult date, when was the call taken, prospect name, obviously, source, I'm gonna tell on that later, score, what is the score of the prospect, call status, which is like live, no show, canceled, rescheduled, offered, which means prospect was offered what we sell on the sales call, and then disposition, this is the result of the call. So the first metric we have show rate. This is essentially how many people show up on the call. Now, I always said this is probably the most important metric, because if people don't show up on the call, it doesn't matter how good you're at sales, you're not gonna close anyone. So make sure so this is high every single time. How do we calculate this? It's live calls divided by booked calls. That gives you show rate. Obviously, the higher the better, but always above 70% at least. So then we have offer rate. Offer rate is how many people you talk to they were offered to book on the calendar with the closer. Not every single prospect is a fit, right? And this tells you how often do you actually pitch the sales call. So in simple terms, if the percentage is low, usually it means that marketing is not targeting the right people. And if it's high, then you talk to the right people, you should double down, right? But it's always dependent on the setter to identify whether or not this person is actually qualified. How do we calculate this? It's offers divided by connected calls. The following metric is set to close, which is essentially just a close rate for setters, right? There's an outside factor that if, the closer is not good at his job and isn't able to close deals, and it's not really the fault of the setter. However, it does paint a great picture of who the setter is actually booking on the calendar, right? Again, this depends on your offer, marketing, and a bunch of other metrics, but usually the KPI what we see is 20 to 25%. How do you calculate this? It's closes divided by booked appointments. Then we have set to offer. That's how many people that the setter booked have been offered what you sell on the sales call with the closer. Again, not every single prospect is qualified to be offered. However, setter's job is to make sure he books appointments only with qualified prospects. Again, the higher the better. We calculate this by offers, so that's pitching the offer on the sales call divided by booked calls. Next one, we have live to offer. That's how many people that showed up were offered what you sell on the sales call with the closer, right? This is the same thing as set to offer. However, what we look at here is people that attend, right? If someone shows up on the call, there's already some commitment. The last step is to close. How do we calculate this? Offers, so pitching the offer divided by live calls. Next metric, we have offer to close. So that's how many people that were set by a setter were offered what you sell on the sales call and closed. So this tells you the probability of someone closing if they're offered, right? Obviously, again, this is dependent on the closer being able to identify if the person is actually a right fit for what you guys sell. This shouldn't be high as live to offer. However, the prospect has to be qualified to be offered, right? So how do we calculate this? Closes divided by offers. Simple. Then we have live to close. This is essentially just a close rate, but again, looking at people that attended the call. So closes divided by live calls. Then we have prospect or call status. You can call it however you want, but you're essentially just tracking people that showed up or not. Why would you want to track like no show, cancel, rescheduled with my close live? Because each type of no show gives you some more information. So now let's say as a setter, majority of people that do not show up are because of like straight no show. Well, that tells me something, right? So what I have to do is go back, listen to the recordings, identify what I could have done better, right? So was it the tonality? Was it me being, a sales guy? Did the prospect was actually interested or just like plainly answering my question? Like what was the main reason why people are not showing up. And if you improve that, then the no-show rate is going to drop down, right? Now, let's say most of the people reschedule, right? This could mean, again, many things. Maybe at the end of the call, I do not double down, triple down on the set time that we were talking about, right? So there's many things that these metrics could show you. And based off of that, you can identify gaps in the setter's game to make sure they improve, right? Therefore, their metrics improve, therefore they make more money, therefore you make more money. Then we have sales call disposition. So what is disposition? It's essentially just result of the call, right? Again, this depends on the offer. If it's B2B, I would say you can track, only closed, not closed, and maybe deposit, but that really depends. When it comes to B2C, like coaching programs, for example, what we've seen is, it's good to track like the reason someone didn't close, right? So that's like money objection, uncertainty, bad timing, partner, that is deposit, and one. If most of the people that do not close are because of financials, then there's probably a problem with the setter financially qualifying the prospect, right? If it's a partner, then, at the end of the call, for example, he doesn't ask, like, does anyone need to be on the call? Or he just doesn't identify that there are some other decision makers other than the guy, for example, right? So it just gives you different data to, again, identify gaps in the setter's game so they can improve. Then we have lead quality. It's extremely important to know what kind of avatar goes through your funnel and talks to your sales reps. Using Typeform, fill out Calendly, that's one of the ways you could do it, where it's more objective. You have to use close-ended questions, right? So you would give a range. How much do you make per month? 1 to 5K, and that's like 1 point, right? And based on the points, you can assign, I guess, like the quality of the avatar to the application that was submitted. The other way is for the appointment setters to decide. This is more subjective, right? However, to make it more objective, you would grade them from 1 to 4. 1 being like financially unqualified, no desire to change. 2, reason to change, might not be the best fit of finances. 3, would be financially qualified, some or no reason to change. And 4, financially qualified and ready to make a change. But again, this depends on you, how you want to structure this. Now, I want to quickly point out that I believe that every single setter, closer, or overall sales rep should have a view like this, where they can see their performance and on their own just identify the gaps, right, in their game and what they should do to improve. There's been many studies where probably like over 90% of sales reps do not hit the quota, right? That's like they don't know how they're actually performing. They don't know if they're on pace, or they have no one that can train them, right? And having a view like this can just help you identify where you struggle and what to improve on. Now we have EODs, end of the day reports. Every single company, I believe, should have a system like this dialed in, because you need to stay on top of things, right? Like by looking at, these reports, you can identify if they're on track with their KPIs, if they're slacking off, having personal issues. And you as a leader, you need to see that and support them. When times get hard, you need to support them to make sure they make money, so you make money. So this is end of the day report for setters, right? We have performance info, like how many dials, pickups, etc., numbers. Then we have call breakdowns, personal performance. The document is going to be in the description, so you can check it out. And now the last part, which is all metrics you should know as a CEO, sales manager, CRO, sales leader. You should know about your setters. So new lead, you have to keep track of how many people come through your funnel, how many new people come through your funnel, right? This just helps you see, okay, if we should hire a next setter, for example. Do not make this mistake where you don't have enough leads and you start hiring a bunch of people. That wastes time, energy, and resources, right? Especially in the high ticket remote space, it's very common that a sales rep joins and after 2 weeks he, leaves. And one of the reason most of the time is like there's not enough leads. What we found so far that works best is like 300-ish leads per month. Why 300? I mean, if setter has 1,000 leads every single month, he has to dial, follow up with, send emails to SMS, he just has 24 hours in a day. So we found that 300 leads-ish is a good way to look for a new setter. Then we have lead source tracking, which is an extremely metric to, keep track of, because it just tells you what channels work the best, so you could double down or completely eliminate. There are a few ways you can do this. And the first one is just sending UTM parameters to a website, which is Mirox. In this case, it would be Mirox.digital, UTM source equals gamma, right? So people watching this video and clicking on my website will send the parameters, equal gamma. Then we have tracking calendar events, which is, One's Hub, HubSpot, Calendly mainly. And that's where you create unique events to identify where they're booking from, right? So if you have a YouTube channel, you can create an event specifically for YouTube channel. Then you have a VSL fund, then you have a Facebook group, etc., etc. And when you create unique events, you can just see, okay, we booked 100 calls from this source and only 20 calls from this source. And then you can break this down, right? Like by lead source. Okay, this lead source most of the time the quality is low, but the close rate is high, and just based off the data, you can make decisions if we want to continue using this channel. It's also good for identifying setters. So you could create like events specifically for just one setter to book on the calendar for any closer. And the last one is using Hyros. That's probably the best ad attribution software there is. Meta Ads doesn't really provide you with good insights on how your ads are performing. If you have a few grand per month to spend, I would go with Hyros if you want to see the performance of your paid advertisement. Then we have dials per day, which is how many times does the setter dial each day. This is in the end of the day report, and based on the data, you can set KPIs of how many times person should dial every single day, right? So maybe 100, 200, 300, depending on what you see in your reports. Then we have connection rate, which is outbound dials or warm cold calling. That's how many people you've dialed that actually picked up. This is not a conversation by any means. You just need to see how many people picked up. In short, the better phone numbers you have, which is leads, the better connection there's gonna be. If you give your sellers low quality leads, then you shouldn't be surprised if they're not performing, right? Because no one's picking up. It's the same thing with dialer. Like if you buy numbers from Twilio and use close, for example, to dial, it might not have the same result as if you were to use Alloware and bunch of other places, right? So it's the same thing as with cold email. You have to warm up your domains in order to make sure that emails do not land in spam. Same principle here. Above 12% is good. So how do we calculate this? Pickups divided by dials. Then we have convo percentage, which is in the end of the day report again, but it depends how you want to define it. Usually it's either like 1 minute conversation or when you get into what you guys sell. Why would you track this? Well, as you scale up, you know what things are going wrong and well, right? And with this metric specifically, you can see how your setters start off the call, right? If they sound like robots, like an actual sales guy, like you can identify based on the percentage to see, what is the problem at the beginning of the call, help them listen to the recordings and, just do mock calls, role plays and stuff like that. You're looking above 50% at least. Again, how do we calculate this? Is convos divided by pickups. And we have convo to qualified. That's simple. How many people are qualified that you had a conversation with? So that tracks quality of the prospect, right? That's qualified prospects divided by convos. Then we have qualified to book. So how many qualified prospects did you book, right? This tells you whether you're providing enough value for them to book a call with a closer. Again, booked calls divided by qualified prospects. Then we have speed to lead. Just make sure that this is 100% dialed in, because there's been another study that when someone opts in to your funnel, to like a free training, you have to call them within the first 5 minutes. If you don't, the probability of them picking up the phone and overall closing just drops like by 8,000% or something like that. So just make sure you have some automation set up every time when someone opts in. And again, the most important metrics, right? When you look at a setter, just look at the show rate, offer rate, set to close, set to offer, live to offer, off to close, live to close, and a bunch of other stuff as we already went over. I already talked about this, but when you do have data in front of you and you're able to identify gaps, do something about it, right? Your setters must listen to their call recordings, take notes, get feedback from coaches or you, and do mock calls. Don't just practice to practice. Make sure to improve the specific gap you've identified. And therefore, the whole metric and a bunch of other metrics that identify each other will go up. So this is everything from me, guys. Thank you for watching. Hopefully provided some value. If you implement what I mentioned in the video, I can almost guarantee you that your business is going to do better, because you're going to see exactly what's happening with your business and your setters. If you're a high ticket offer making over $50,000 per month, book a call down below to see how we can build a tracking system for you like I showed in the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you. Bye.